The 3 types of karma that determine your next life, and why most people get it wrong.
Let me ask you something that might sound strange at first. Have you ever looked at your life and wondered why things are the way they are? Not in a complaining way, but in a genuinely curious way. Why were you born into your particular family? Why do you have the personality you have? Why do certain patterns keep repeating in your life, no matter how hard you try to change them? Most people never ask these questions, and the ones who do usually get fed one of 2 answers. Either it's all random chance, just the luck of the genetic lottery, or it's all predetermined by some cosmic plan you have no control over. But what if I told you there's a 3rd explanation, one that's been tested and refined over 25 centuries, that puts you completely in the driver's seat? An explanation that says your current life isn't random and isn't predetermined, but is the direct result of choices you've made, and that your future is being shaped right now, in this very moment, by how you're thinking and acting today. That's what we're diving into in the next 15 minutes, and I promise you, by the end of this, you'll never look at your daily choices the same way again. The Buddha taught something radical about human existence. He said that being human isn't an accident, and it's not a gift from an external creator. It's earned, and more importantly, it can be lost. This might sound harsh, but stick with me, because understanding this completely changes how you approach every single day. See, in Buddhist cosmology, there are 6 realms of existence, and humans occupy just one of them. There are hell realms characterized by intense suffering, animal realms driven by instinct and survival, ghost realms filled with insatiable craving, and heavenly realms of pleasure and ease. Each realm isn't really a physical place you go to after death. They're states of consciousness, patterns of existence that minds naturally gravitate toward based on their predominant qualities. And here's the crucial part that most people miss. You're not locked in to being human. Your next existence, whatever form it takes, is being determined right now by the quality of your mental habits. Now, before this sounds too abstract or mystical, let me break down exactly how this works, because it's actually incredibly practical. The Buddha identified 3 types of karma, 3 types of action that shape what you become. And this is where most people completely misunderstand the whole concept. They think karma is about cosmic justice, about good people getting rewarded and bad people getting punished. That's not it at all. Karma is simply cause and effect operating in the mental realm. It's about patterns, habits, and momentum. The 3 types are bodily actions, verbal actions, and mental actions, and they're listed in order of increasing importance. Most people focus almost entirely on what they do with their bodies, a little bit on what they say, and almost not at all on what they think. But the Buddha flipped that priority completely upside down. He said mental actions are the most powerful because they're the source of everything else. Your thoughts create your speech. Your speech reinforces your thoughts and drives your actions. Your actions deepen the mental grooves that produce more thoughts. It's a feedback loop, and wherever that loop is spinning, that's where you're heading. Let me give you a concrete example of how this plays out. Imagine 2 people who both commit the same harmful action. Maybe they both lie to someone, the exact same lie, in similar circumstances. Person A tells the lie out of fear, feels terrible about it immediately, reflects on why they did it, and commits to being more honest going forward. Person B tells the lie casually, feels justified, thinks the other person deserved it, and walks away without a second thought. Same action, completely different karmic result. Why? Because karma isn't about the external action alone. It's about the intention behind it, the emotional quality surrounding it, and most importantly, the mental habit it reinforces. Person A weakened their tendency toward dishonesty. Person B strengthened theirs. Person A moved incrementally toward a mental state characterized by honesty and clarity. Person B moved toward a mental state characterized by deception and justification. Do this thousands of times with thousands of actions, and you're not just creating isolated incidents, you're shaping the fundamental structure of your consciousness. You're training your mind to default to certain patterns. And this is where the teaching gets really interesting, and honestly, kind of sobering. The Buddha said that at the moment of death, the mind doesn't just vanish into nothing. The patterns you've spent your life reinforcing continue. They seek out circumstances that match their nature. A mind that's spent decades in states of anger, resentment, and hostility doesn't suddenly become peaceful just because the body dies. It carries that momentum forward. It gravitates toward experiences that match that frequency. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but how does a pattern of consciousness become a new birth? This is where we have to understand what the Buddha meant by rebirth, because it's not reincarnation in the way most people imagine it. There's no soul, no unchanging self that transmigrates from body to body like a person moving from one house to another. Instead, there's a process of continuity without identity. Think of it like a flame passing from one candle to another. The second flame isn't the same flame as the first, but it's not completely different either. There's a causal connection, a transfer of process, but not a transfer of substance. Your consciousness right now is the continuation of previous mental patterns, and it will continue into future patterns, but there's no little essence of you that remains unchanged through it all. The realm you're born into reflects the dominant quality of the mind at death, which itself reflects the dominant patterns you've cultivated throughout life. A mind saturated with generosity, kindness, and clarity naturally moves toward the human realm or higher. These qualities create a consciousness that's balanced, capable of both feeling and reflecting, experiencing both pleasure and pain without being overwhelmed by either. That's the sweet spot for spiritual development. But a mind saturated with greed moves toward the ghost realm, always hungry, never satisfied. A mind driven purely by instinct and survival moves toward the animal realm. A mind consumed by hatred and violence moves toward the hell realms. And here's the part that surprises people. Even a mind full of joy and pleasure, if it lacks wisdom, moves toward the heavenly realms, which sounds great until you realize that beings in those realms are so comfortable they rarely grow. They're spiritually stagnant. They use up their good karma, enjoying themselves, and when it runs out, they fall back down. The human realm, with its mixture of suffering and possibility, is actually the ideal launching point for awakening. So let's talk about why you're human right now. If this teaching is correct, if you're here listening to this with a human mind and a human body, what does that tell you about your past? It tells you that at some point, probably over many lifetimes, you cultivated enough wholesome karma to land here. You practiced generosity, even in small ways. You chose honesty when lying would have been easier. You showed kindness when cruelty was expected. You restrained harmful impulses. You maybe meditated or at least spent moments in genuine reflection. None of this means you were perfect. You obviously weren't, because perfect beings don't need to be born at all. They've exited the cycle entirely. But you were good enough, clear enough to earn this chance. And make no mistake, it is a chance, not a guarantee. The Buddha used a striking image to illustrate how rare human birth is. He said, imagine a vast ocean, and somewhere in that ocean there's a wooden yoke floating on the surface, just drifting randomly. And at the bottom of the ocean, there's a blind turtle who surfaces only once every 100 years. The chance of that blind turtle surfacing at the exact moment and place where its head goes through the hole in the yoke, that's how rare it is to be born human. We're talking astronomically rare. But here you are. You won the cosmic lottery. The question is, what are you doing with it? Because here's the uncomfortable truth that most spiritual teachers don't emphasize enough. You can lose this. You're not locked into being human. If you spend this life cultivating anger, greed, and delusion, strengthening those mental patterns day after day, you're actively creating the causes for a future that doesn't include human consciousness. And this isn't a scare tactic. It's just how the system works. Water flows downhill. Minds flow toward states that match their habitual patterns. If your patterns are wholesome, you maintain or elevate your state. If your patterns are unwholesome, you decline. It's that simple and that serious. The Buddha wasn't trying to control people with fear when he taught about the lower realms. He was giving a warning based on observed reality, like a doctor telling you that if you keep smoking, you'll get lung cancer. It's not a moral judgment, it's a description of cause and effect.
Now, let's get practical, because this is where the teaching transforms from interesting philosophy into life-changing guidance. If you understand that your future is being created right now in this moment by the quality of your thoughts, speech, and actions, then every moment becomes an opportunity. Every interaction is a chance to strengthen wholesome patterns or weaken unwholesome ones. Every thought you notice and redirect is a tiny deposit in your karmic bank account. This is why the Buddha placed such enormous emphasis on mindfulness, on moment-to-moment awareness of what's happening in your mind, because you can't change what you don't see. Most people sleepwalk through life, completely unaware of their mental habits. They react automatically to every stimulus, reinforcing the same patterns they've always had, wondering why their life never changes. But when you start paying attention, when you actually watch your mind, you begin to see the patterns. You notice that certain situations trigger anger. Other situations trigger craving. You see how your mind justifies harmful actions. You catch yourself in the middle of creating the very suffering you claim you don't want. And once you see it, you can choose differently. Not perfectly, not all at once, but incrementally. You can pause before speaking in anger. You can notice a greedy impulse and choose not to act on it. You can catch a deceptive thought before it becomes a lie. Each time you do this, you're literally rewiring your consciousness. You're weakening the neural and karmic pathways that lead to suffering and strengthening the ones that lead to peace. Neuroscience has actually caught up to what the Buddha taught 25 centuries ago. We now know that the brain is plastic, that it physically changes based on repeated thoughts and behaviors. What fires together, wires together. The patterns you repeat become the structure of your mind. The Buddha knew this without brain scanners. He figured it out through direct observation of his own consciousness, and he taught a systematic method for transforming it. So what does this mean for how you should actually live? First, it means taking ethics seriously, not because some authority figure said so, but because you understand that your actions have consequences that extend far beyond this life. When you lie, you're not just creating problems in your relationship or your job. You're literally training your mind to be the kind of mind that lies, and that's the mind you're taking with you into death. When you're generous, you're not just helping someone else, you're cultivating a mental state of abundance and non-clinging that will serve you in this life and beyond. Second, it means developing concentration, the ability to steady your mind and keep it present. A scattered mind can't see its patterns clearly. A scattered mind is buffeted by every passing impulse. But a concentrated mind can observe, can choose, can redirect. That's why meditation isn't just relaxation or stress relief, though it does those things. It's mental training. It's the gym for your consciousness. You're literally building the muscle of awareness that allows you to see and interrupt harmful patterns before they take root. Third, it means cultivating wisdom, which in Buddhism doesn't mean accumulating knowledge. It means seeing clearly into the nature of reality. Specifically, seeing three fundamental characteristics: that all things are impermanent, that clinging to impermanent things causes suffering, and that there's no fixed, unchanging self at the center of your experience. This last one is crucial for understanding rebirth. When you deeply see that there's no solid, unchanging you, the fear of death transforms. You realize that what you call self is already changing, moment to moment.
The you of 10 years ago isn't the you of today. The you of this morning isn't the you of this evening. You're a process, not a thing. Death is just a bigger change in the same ongoing process. And if you've spent your life cultivating wholesome qualities, that process continues in a wholesome direction. If you've cultivated unwholesome qualities, it continues in an unwholesome direction. The process doesn't care about your beliefs or your identity. It just follows its momentum.
Here's something else most people miss. The quality of your mind at the moment of death matters enormously, but you can't fake it. You can't live a selfish, angry life and then try to have good thoughts on your deathbed and expect that to override decades of habit. The mind at death will default to its strongest patterns. If you've spent years cultivating mindfulness, compassion, and clarity, those will likely be present even in the confusion and pain of dying. If you've spent years cultivating greed, anger, and delusion, those will dominate. This is why the practice is so important now, while you're healthy, while you have time. You're not just trying to feel better in the present moment, though that's a nice side effect. You're literally training for the most important transition you'll ever make. You're preparing your mind so that when death comes, it moves in a wholesome direction rather than an unwholesome one. And here's the beautiful part that makes all of this worthwhile. You don't have to be perfect. The Buddha never demanded perfection. He taught a path of gradual training, of incremental improvement. Every moment of mindfulness counts. Every act of kindness matters. Every time you choose wisdom over reactivity, you're moving in the right direction. You're planting seeds. Some of those seeds will ripen in this life. You'll notice you're less anxious, more patient, more content. Other seeds will ripen after this life, creating favorable conditions for your continued development. And still other seeds will ripen many lifetimes from now when circumstances are right. Nothing is wasted. Every wholesome thought, every generous action, every moment of clear seeing is a deposit that pays dividends forever. This is why the Buddha called human birth precious. Not because humans are superior to other beings, but because humans have the unique combination of suffering and intelligence that makes spiritual development possible. We suffer enough to be motivated to seek liberation, but we're not so overwhelmed by suffering that we can't think clearly. We have enough pleasure to maintain our strength, but not so much that we become complacent. We're right in the sweet spot.
So, as we close, I want to leave you with a challenge. For the next week, practice karmic awareness. Pay attention to your intentions before you act. Notice the quality of your thoughts throughout the day. When you catch yourself thinking in anger, greed, or delusion, don't judge yourself harshly. Just notice it, acknowledge it, and gently redirect. When you catch yourself thinking in generosity, compassion, or wisdom, appreciate it. Acknowledge that you're cultivating something valuable. At the end of each day, do a brief review. What were the predominant mental states you inhabited? What patterns did you strengthen? What patterns did you weaken? Don't turn this into a guilt trip. Make it an honest investigation, like a scientist observing data. Over time, you'll start to see your life differently. You'll realize that you're not a fixed self trying to get somewhere. You're a process of becoming that's happening right now. And the direction of that becoming is entirely in your hands. That's both sobering and incredibly empowering. Your next life isn't something that happens to you. It's something you're creating, moment by moment, choice by choice, thought by thought. So choose wisely. Choose with awareness. And remember, you've already done something incredibly rare just by being here. Don't waste it.